Welcome, everyone. And tonight we have a very, very special talk with a great leader, coach, mentor, an author. She's so many things that just talking about her will not be enough for now. So let me start by welcoming you. My name is Rima Jizawi. I'm the founder of Correach, and I have my colleagues with me here tonight to help us and to be supporting us, supporting you all in our journey together for our talk tonight. We have our tech team. If you want anything, you can mention them in the chat and they will be supporting you. And we have also a person who will be my colleague Amal, who will be also answering any of your questions in the chat as well. Let me start by telling you a little bit about Correach for whomever is new to us and joining us for the first time today and joining Correach for the first time today in our talk and in our initiative of charity of knowledge. Correach is simply a coaching firm and a platform that serves both businesses and individuals. We have a purpose that drives us on a daily basis, that really moves us in everything that we do. And it's the reason of why we exist. Our purpose is to prioritize the growth of the human elements within people so that together we build a world we aspire to reach. In the firm, we help the businesses or the leaders and their team to create a culture that they can work in a much more harmonious way, and they bring their really wholeness and human side to that workplace. And an individual in the platform, we serve the individual in anything that they need when it comes to coaching on a one-on-one basis, trainings and talks, beautiful, amazing, with amazing, great speakers like our amazing speaker tonight. And let me now introduce you to Janet. I know Janet since 2014. I've met her the first time in Dubai, in the ICF Middle East conference that happened in Dubai in 2014. And that's when I first met her. And I saw her on the stage talking. And the minute Janet started talking, she captured something in my soul, not only in my heart, in my soul. Her wisdom, the way she talks, the way she expresses. She speaks to the mind, to the heart, because of everything that Janet have accumulated and accomplished in her life. And she is very generous in the way she gives it to the world. Janet is a visionary, she's a writer, she's a speaker and a coach. She's the author of the best-selling book, Invite Change, Lessons from 2020, the Year of No Return. She is an MCC, she's a Master Certified Coach, and she is the ICF Global Past President as well. As I mentioned, there is so many things I can speak about Janet. I will leave the rest to her, and I would want to welcome you sincerely, Janet, to our tonight's talk, and we're very grateful for having you with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Reem. I remember our first meeting in 2014 in Dubai very fondly, and have enjoyed our engagement over the years, and I feel very honored to be with you and to help celebrate Ramadan and be with your community. So here we go. As you know, I always have more than I can ever accomplish in a single time, so we'll go as far and as wide as we can possibly do tonight. Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring up some slides, folks, and because it always does help us get a little bit of focus of attention. And I do, Reem, absolutely love whoever designed your backdrop for this celebration is quite something. So thank you for this. I just keep staring at it going, oh, so beautiful.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
You know, as coaches, one of the things you learn very early on is a distinction in coaching versus other human development modalities is the quality of foundation to the relationship that we establish. And that happens through what we call the agreement. And I have found for myself over the years that applying that practice of making an agreement with myself for how I want to show up in a given moment, how I want to contribute in a given moment, how I want to open myself to receive something that might be, I'm going to use the word disturbing. I do tend, Reem didn't say this, so I will. I do tend to be a little provocative. So success for me might be that you find an idea, an assumption, a perspective, maybe even a habit that's tried and true and comfortable, being challenged in what I speak about. And I'll do it gently, but I will ask you to give yourself permission to relax into some state of wonder and curiosity, or rather than is it right or is it wrong? Even that simple language that we all share in all different forms of language, either or thinking, is what keeps us away from our sense of wholeness and opportunity for harmony in our lives. I might have provoked something even there. So you've probably read the description, and the very first line of it said, invite yourself to pause and reflect on the choices you pursue. So I want you to take a moment and do that for me. What is the choice to be here tonight? If you read the description and what we're here to explore, what are you wanting to have as an outcome? Might be feel different, see something differently, have a new idea, have another choice you want to pursue, put something in context. Those are just examples. What is it that you want as a result of this that will have made the 90 minutes together satisfying, useful, contributory for you? And please use the chat pod to answer that question. Because of course, right now, as you're listening to me talk, you want to say something. We all do as human beings. And this format doesn't make it easy for us to do that. So all throughout, don't sit on your hands on a question that you have, because you won't hear what I have to say. Put it in the chat pod and I'll weave it in. So take a moment now. What is it that would be a useful outcome from our 90 minutes together? It might give me a little bit of insight about who you are and why you've come. Ah, yes, I'm in co-host. So, Amal or Nuran, either one of you, somebody, you might want to pause the recording now while we see. I've gotten a taste here, and keep adding to it as we go. That will be very, very wonderful. So what are we doing? The name of this talk is something Reem and I brainstormed, the Mirage of Separation. And what I was thinking about was that there's a way that each of us have been socialized. I will use that term, indoctrinated. Whatever your family of origin is, the country in which you would call your home, your roots, the lineage, the cultural traditions, the language that you speak, the faith that you follow. All of these elements are contributing to who you are. And it's my belief that we also, each of us, as we're born into the world, have come with whatever unique set of capabilities, innate capabilities, not yet exercised. As we're a baby coming into the world, we don't know what we're going to be, and we don't actually know how to do anything. And in fact, you might recall that children of human beings have the longest period that they're with their parents of any of the animals in the kingdom called planet Earth. And yet there is something absolutely unique about each one of us. And as we grow up in that family, we begin to adopt some things that are not unique to us, but might be unique to our family. and maybe to our broader community, and maybe to the state or province we live, or the country that we live in. And if we have the privilege of being able to travel, those experiences, as Martin was saying, traveling with other people, that adds into what I would call our worldview. And oftentimes what happens along the path of constructing that worldview is that we start to make some distinctions. So we express a judgment about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what's respectful, what's not respectful, what is the way I'm to be when I'm in this context, my professional workplace, for example, what's expected when I'm with my mother-in-law or my father-in-law, what's expected when I'm with my siblings, how do I conduct myself when I'm at a community meeting, and so on and so on. And we build an invisible bit of a rule book inside of us about how we're to be. And of course, for a very long time in my life, I was sure that that was the right way to go. One of the things that emerged for me was that I realized I was spending a great deal of energy, emotional energy, mental energy, physical energy, making sure that I was being responsible about how I showed up in different spaces with different people. And it was taking a lot of energy to do it. This is what I mean about the mirage of separation. Now, I'm giving you purposely a very simplistic look at it. We're going to dive a little more deeply into this because the mirage of separation is contributing to a lot of the strife we see in the world. No matter what country you're from, or what you're watching as your news preference, or what you might be getting exposed to about what's happening in other parts of the world, we separate in order to stay safe. And in the process, we get a narrower and smaller and more confining, more imprisoning belief system. And those separations create a breakdown in the very fabric of human society. Those of you that like to study theory, the social psychologist Edgar Schein, very early teacher for me, he's now 70 years in this body of work, would tell you the fundamental unit of society is relationship. And anything that gets in the way of us having relationship where the whole of ourselves may participate is worthy of our attention. So that's my intention for us together, that you have some motivation for a reflection practice to give attention, that you might also get some inspiration to seeing beyond habit, and that you restore a sense of aspiration to dream and choose something that is beyond the mirage of separation and stepping into the full embodiment of who you are. All right. Reem, do we have eagles where you are? They probably don't look like our ones here in the Pacific Northwest, but you've got them in your region, right?
Yes, yes, we
Yeah.
do.
What symbol do they carry? I meant to look this up before today, and I didn't get a chance to do that.
More of the strength, sharpness, speed.
I've always wanted to see through the eyes of eagles. They have extraordinary sight, and I live on an island, and the body of water is very close, and we have very high trees on the property next to our home. And I've been watching the eagles are mating right now, and I've been watching them soaring up in the sky, and then they instantly know how to drop down and catch a fish in the water. How do they do that? Like hundreds of feet they drop in like 3 seconds. It's quite something. So I use them for this particular point I'm making because eagles know what the meaning is in their life, right? They mate for life. They take care of their children as they're born. They teach them to fly and to soar and to fish and to hunt, and they have this this feeling, as you said, of power and strength. And what I notice in working with people in all walks of life is that we're all yearning for a sense of meaning in our lives. And I think we all instinctively, internally know that we came here into the world for some reason. I think my father spent his entire life trying to figure out what that reason was. But he grew up at a time when having the discretion to choose that wasn't available. It wasn't until much later in his life. And so my second point here is that most of us spend our entire life seeking answers beyond what we know. Why? Because that's where wonder lives. That's where that sense of something larger than ourselves that pulls us in, right? It's compelling. It's like a magnet. It draws us forward. We want to have that feeling of activation in our belly. Yes, we're all here for a reason. And when we don't discover the reason, it can feel like we're not measuring up. Somehow we've missed the point, and we're not quite being in our lives in the way that is possible. And that doesn't feel very good. Now, for some people, the opposite is true. They find a place in their lives where it's comfortable and it's easy, and they don't move forward at all. And they have people in their lives who say, why aren't you more ambitious? Why aren't you doing anything you can with your creativity? So hold that tension in your mind for a minute. What's the response to the yearning, the longing for meaning? In one case, the response is being called forward and pursuing it. In the other, it's valuing safety and security over risk-taking. They're both important. They're both important. The question is, are we being alert to what's motivating choosing one or the other, or some ratio of both? And I have a colleague who is fabulous at taking risk at work and incredibly conservative with her children. To the point that she's complaining about her children kind of pushing up against, none of you have had this experience, I'm sure, pushing up against the authority saying, but why can't I? And she wants a better relationship with her children and cannot see, right? She's got blinders on about her overriding priority of safety and security for her children is actually choking them. They're not getting to grow up and be their best selves, even though that's the work she does all day long in her business. Interesting paradox, right? So we're yearning for meaning in our lives, but that doesn't mean that we can actually stay available to see it when it's right in front of us. It's another one of the mirages of separation. We think it's out there. I firmly believe it's in here. So potential is in the definition of coaching. And early on in my coaching career, I asked people what they thought potential meant. And I got so many answers, I realized that nobody had any idea what the word meant. So I want to do a little level set for us. Potential is not something you create. You don't do anything to have potential. Potential is inherent in who you are, and it has no limit. Why? Because you are always growing and changing, which means your ability to open the camera lens and see more and more and more of your own possibility is available to you. And in this way, it makes a level playing field. Every single one of us has unlimited potential. So having it is not the issue. The issue is whether we will tap it, whether we will slow down enough from all of our doing and listen deeply within to understand, what part of me could I bring here? What part of me am I not tapping into? So the definition is very straightforward, coming from the Latin, to be able to have authority and power, to be effective in action. Potential, however, is the condition of having power that's potent and has not yet come into being. All right. So here's a question I want you to write down. Yeah, Reem, go ahead.
Thank you for this explanation about potential. And I just want to mention about the slides.
Uh-huh.
There might not be, because we can't see the slides changing.
Oh, I see that note there. Well, I wonder why that's happening. So let's try this again. All right, I'm sharing the screen.
Perfect. Yes.
They're there. It's there now.
Yes.
Now let's try this. Is that next one showing up?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're all set. Thanks. Sometimes Zoom has a mind of its own, so I appreciate the clue. All right. So it's a condition of having power that's potent and has not yet come into being. All right. Let's give you another couple of minutes for reflection, and you can put it in chat if you want, but it's not necessary. This is a question I'm with at least once a quarter for a whole week. I'll do journal writing. I'll take a hike in nature. Sometimes I'll sit in meditation. Sometimes I love to sing when I'm gardening, and I'll sing this question for myself. And here it is. And I'll put it in the chat pod for you at the same time. What is in the way of expressing my fully potent self today? What is in the way of expressing my fully potent self today? And I'm going to count to 60 while you have a chance to write a few notes for yourself. We're in juxtaposition between the outer world and all of the demands and cultural conflict and positional judgments and worldviews, and these are all things we're competing with. And yet one of the, perhaps there are other animals. I was quite intrigued by the story about the elephant stomping on the poacher. That might have been reported in your news. Because I've thought for some time that more than us have the ability for reflection and to appreciate an internal world, an inner world, different from an outer world. And yet we're so seduced, almost to the point of addiction, to proving something, to being able to demonstrate our contribution in the name of achievements and accomplishment, and it's hollow, right? It's a bit of a revolving door. So the way I like to frame this when we talk about what or who is in your way is mental blinders and emotional barriers. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time here with this so that you have an opportunity to put what you've written in context to the question. So there's three mental barriers that I want to share with you. The first is dualistic thinking. Yes, no, black, white, either or, it's this or it's that. In all ways, it puts us separate from. We have an internal perspective that there is something that it's supposed to be, and it's not that, and it's not that. We've set up these polar opposites, and then we're frustrated that we don't make decisions and choices and move forward. A very simple technique in coaching is to use the language of yes and. So if I'm working with my teenager who is wanting to take a big risk, I'm recalling actually a grandchild who wanted to go skydiving at 6, and I said, no way, Jose, unless you're doing it on the back of the guy who's jumping out of the airplane. And this was about my resistance, right? So we've got this interplay between resistance and risk-taking. However, I realized that if I got curious about what he was curious about with skydiving, I might discover that he was actually being more careful than what I was thinking was going on, because I really hadn't stopped to see it through his eyes. So when we can say yes, and what experience are you wanting from being in skydiving? What are you imagining will happen when you're doing that? how will you be able to reach the lines of the chute? Right? Like all the things that I might be concerned about, I could have asked. I could have asked the question rather than my knee-jerk response of no, that's not happening. And the simple situation I'm giving you now, extend that out. How do we hold racism? How do we hold faith-based persecution? How do we hold authoritarianism? Big questions. It's the same problem. There's a right answer, and it's mine. It doesn't matter which side of the issue you're sitting on. There's a right answer, and it's mine, and that means yours is wrong. Well, life is way too interconnected for that to be the answer. Just look at our bodies. Our bodies resolved this polarity a long time ago. It knows unity. And it's operating quite nicely, thank you very much. It lets you know when you have overindulged and it's time to, as you do during Ramadan, to fast and clear and cleanse the body. And it restores reserves and resource. It's really quite extraordinary. We can learn a lot from the body in terms of how we relate to each other in society. So related to this dualistic thinking is judgment. Now, judgment is seen as something we should not have. We should be non-judgmental, or we need to be able to suspend our judgment. I'm going to give you another provocative. In the world according to Janet, it's not possible. Judgment is instinctive in the human condition. I said to somebody earlier today, you know, if I'm standing in front of a fir tree and I'm also standing in front of a cedar tree, I know one's a fir and one's a cedar because I have the judgment of looking at their bark and I realize they're completely different. Now, I can see the difference in the tree from the outside. We can't do that with people. We have no idea who people are from the outside, ever. So all of the stereotypes and assessments that we make about someone before they've ever spoken a word are judgment that paralyzes us. We make something fearful when it is not yet worthy of being unsafe or a threat to us. There's a wonderful acronym for the word fear. You might want to write this one down. False evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. This mental barrier of judgment is the source of this. And a wonderful practice, I wasn't going to talk about this, but it's on my mind, so here you go. A wonderful practice is to notice judgment and practice pausing. Short circuit the reactive response to a moment that you see as threatening. And allow yourself to breathe a little more deeply. We put a child who is overactive in front of a white wall and we count to 8. And miraculously, their parasympathetic system relaxes and they're no longer crying. And now I can get down on my knees and have a rational conversation with this child. Can't do it when we're raging, right? So it's the same principle here as an adult to notice when we are in a moment of judging another or a situation in some way, taking some deep breaths, pausing the judgment. And if you stay with the breath long enough, you'll notice your curiosity naturally gets activated. And all of a sudden we realize, I want to know what's behind this. And if we can stay just another second longer and ask the question we don't know the answer to, we have the possibility of restoring relationship. The relationship that got disrupted in the moment that we noticed the judgment. And remember, relationship is the fundamental unit of society. So this is really super important that we have this opportunity to stay in the relationship, not abandon out of our knee-jerk response. One more mental barrier here to talk about. This one is took me a long time to unlearn, and it's the notion of being an expert. I grew up at a time in our country's history when our educational system was about reading and writing and memorizing and spitting it back out to demonstrate your efficacy. I also know there's a high regard in the Middle East and in Saudi in particular for education. That's a fantastic value, but I didn't get educated. What I did is I demonstrated my ability to read, interpret, and regurgitate. I didn't learn critical thinking until I was in college. And now I had professors that didn't care about my paper other than it had to be turned in because that was the rules. What they cared about was the quality of my critical thinking. Could I be with a question that disturbed me long enough to have a point of view? And then could I be with the point of view of another that was different from mine and realize, both are right answers. That means there's more than one right answer. That means I don't need to be an expert in anything. What I need to be is curious. I need to learn to think. Expert status is a mental barrier. Yes, it's important to develop expertise. I am not questioning that. But when we place that as a higher priority, we are epically going to be out of sync with the world. Information and circumstances change so rapidly today. You've probably all been introduced at some point in time to the acronym VUCA. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This was how we characterized the world of war 25 years ago. And it changed the strategy that's being used for how we deploy armed forces in response to that kind of environment. Well, I'm not sure the world has ever not been VUCA. It's just been in varying degrees, and we probably have a much higher intensity in our zero geography world today. However, it's instructive to ask the question, why do we construct expertise? Because it builds separation, the mirage of separation. If I'm smarter than you, you're not going to get me. You're not going to beat me. I will take the day, if you will. Well, that separation is going to keep you from new experience. You will stop seeing what's happening right in front of you. So expertise, yes, and openness, yes, and. Remember this technique. All right, what about emotional barriers? Control is the first one. By golly, my friend and her children, this is exactly what she's doing. She's controlling for wonderful intent to have safety and security for her kids. And they're learning to individuate from the parents so they can be self-sufficient, which of course we want our kids to be responsible and values-driven and self-sufficient. And if I'm controlling them, they're not going to learn. So the love of learning is so much more important than control. And we have to let go of what we think we know in order to be in the wonder of what we don't know, to see, wow, what experience might that create? If we want more creativity and innovation in the world, we must create the conditions for people to trust their instincts, that they have an original idea emerging, and to go experiment with it and see what they can learn. This is so important to the evolution of society. And control gets in the way in the name of safety and security. The next one is comfort. And while it's related, it's a little bit different. We have a part of the human body, our neurobiology, that's called the reticular activating system. And the brain absolutely loves habits because they keep us nice and safe, and mostly because they conserve energy. The numbers I read, who knows what's right. I'm actually very curious about how they figure this out. 20 million bits a second, 20 million bits of information a second are coming at us as human beings. 20 million bits. We can grab about 14. I tried to count once if I could really pick up 14 pieces of data. You know that game you play where you get to see a bunch of objects on a tray and you have 10 seconds to look at it and then they take the tray away and you're supposed to say how many you could recall? I don't think I ever got to 14. So I got a long way to go yet. But the problem is comfort gets in the way. So habits that are things I do in my life that give me pleasure, where I feel safe and secure, so my control need is satisfied. I'm with people that love me, and so I don't have any uncertainty about whether I'm good enough or whether I'm worthy. And I'm in a nice place that's, warm and comfortable for me. As I don't want to leave this comfortable cocoon. separation. The whole world isn't like that. If you want to be in the world, if you want to make your contribution in the world, if you want to step into your full potential, you must risk having some moments of discomfort. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's something on the other side of it. I was reading some racism research about a month ago, and they were testing giving a person of color image to a person who identifies as white. And they were looking at what was firing in the brain at 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. It only took to 15 seconds for the fear markers to stop firing. And the interesting thing about this is that familiarity, comfort, familiarity builds relationship. If we could simply sit in the silent presence of each other in our difference, our curiosity activates. Same thing that happens to the parasympathetic system of the raging child. It's the same parallel. But we're so conditioned to seeing difference as a threat that we don't give our bodies enough time to realize, is it true? False evidence appearing real. It's not true. It's just not true. And if I stay with this person long enough and we gaze into each other's eyes, we have a possibility of asking a question where we might learn a place that bridges our difference. The last one is what I call enslavement. And what I'm really talking about here is that we find ourselves following what's outside of us as a standard. And I'm going to give you 3 acronyms this time. So the first one is Fomo. You might have heard this one, fear of missing out. What's everybody else doing? I want to do that too. And we totally disregard whether it's a good thing for us or respectful for us or honoring for us. The next one is Fopo, fear of other people's opinions. We scan the territory, trying to figure out who's getting ahead, who's performing well, who gets lots of kudos and recognition, who is identified as successful, and we mimic their actions and their behaviors. But here's the problem. We're not them. And there's another problem. They did that in the past. That's in the rearview mirror. And by the time I figure out how to do what they're doing so that I don't have to be judged by them, the whole environment has changed in front of me. It's a waste of energy. I've separated myself yet again. So other people's opinions really don't count. The only one that does is the one of yourself. So now here's the next one, phony, which is fear of not being important. And this is probably the hardest one. Can I be well regarded? So Reem, great honoring of me and your introduction, and I so appreciate the collegiality that we've enjoyed over the years. But that's because of who we're being with each other, not because of what I know or what you know. That's just sort of like icing on the cake. It's part of the meal we're having. But it's not the heartbeat of our relationship. Right? So the fear of not being important is essentially saying, I don't believe I'm good enough. I don't believe that I measure up. I don't think I can do it. I don't matter. I'm not worthy. And so we push and we push and we push. So we survive, not thrive. And we push away anything that doesn't measure up in the other people's opinions or in the missing out. And we're not using our whole potential. And at some point we have sadness and shame, blame about all of that. And we start to live out of a very narrow self-definition. And we're unhappy. In some ways, that's the moment when people pause their lives and say, what am I yearning for? And they begin a spiritual journey for most, a consciousness journey for others. And some will do it secular, some will do it spiritual, it doesn't matter. They'll begin seeking some understanding that lives beyond everything that they can see out there and realize that the inner and the outer is the same thing. We're chasing ourselves inside. Stop separating. It's a mirage, and it's hurtful. Actually, what's happening in the world is what's important for us to pay attention to. Now, the lens through which we pay attention is the key. How much time have you spent thinking about your essence? Who are you at the core of your being? What are the qualities that make you, you? I like this definition very much because it helps lead us into the reason why we have such difficulty as adults capturing who and what our essence is. Everybody else can see it, by the way. This is sort of the cosmic joke. Everybody knows what our essence is, but we don't. Because they're paying attention to what we do and say and what their experience is when they're with us. And they're able to grab, well, the essence of this person is this, this, and this. I'm like, really? You think that? We teach this all the time, and people will come back to class after sharing with their partner at home who says to them, well, I knew that. I knew that about you. Well, how come you didn't tell me? You didn't tell me that was my essence. So here's the corollary. I've had parents go home and kneel down and look their children in the eyes and say words that they see as the essence of their child, and been brought to tears with the brilliant beaming that came off the child's face, because the child is seen for their essence, not for their compliance, right? Not for the whatever the way is that they've learned to fit into the family, but the essence of who they are, independent of all that circumstance. This is such an important piece of coming to peace with ourselves, is being able to recognize, who am I? Who am I inside? And allowing that to be transparent. This separation of the outer and the inner just puts us in pain. And there's a freedom, a liberation that comes when we choose instead to take all that personality that we built to get along in the world. We got to build a healthy ego, no question about it. But it can't run the show. The essence of ourselves, our aware ego, the centered consciousness in us, that's who must run the show if we're going to live into our full potential and enjoy quality of life. Yes, Al, thank you for your question here. As an overthinker, finding it hard sometimes to pause and let go. So the question to be with is, what am I attached to? What am I holding on to as my self-definition? That by holding on to it is putting me in suffering, and I can see it. What is it serving? It is serving something. I know when my father said to me, to be successful in the world, work harder than anybody else and produce the results, be reliable. Yes, I did that. I did that quite well. Only to discover that for about 6 years of my 14 years at my corporate job, I was underpaid, to the point when they finally did a salary survey at some point in my career, and they had to go to the board to get an exception to bring me up to the entry level of the position I'd been in 3 years. I've never negotiated for a salary. I have no idea how to do it. I was living that belief system, that principle that my dad gave me. Lots of rewards, huge competency development, wonderful opportunities to do cool things, met lots of great people. I loved my job, but I was a little out of balance. And ultimately what I realized is that while I had a lot of people who loved hanging out with me and doing work with me, there was a whole nother set of people that thought I was arrogant and full of myself, because I always got these hard projects and I did them well. I had never had any conversation with them, so I had no way of knowing that they felt that way. Mirage of Separation. So when I could get the value of the belief and stop being mad at my father for giving it to me, I realized it was simply time to evolve it. Yes, thank you, belief. That was useful. I want something more now. So what must I believe in order to behave and respond and engage in something differently? That's the practice. Noticing we're suffering. Finding what is the belief I'm living out of. What does my essence really want here, and what belief might that require of me? This is something we call our Rosetta. In our coach training program, we teach about the authentic self, and and that the quest for meaning and satisfaction is an inside job, is always an inside job. And I've just explained to you all the ways in which we do outside in, and it makes us crazy and fatigued and unhappy. And yeah, we keep thinking, if I just change my circumstances, if I go to work for a new boss, if I move to a new city, if I get married if I'm single, or get divorced if I'm married, or if I have children, like, the if game, only if game is outside in thinking. And it's always going to be rearview mirror based on history. Oh, I think I want that now. And we go into that adventure only to come out of that adventure wondering, oi, that didn't do it for me. Inside out relating is how we have vitality. And you'll see in the center, the authentic self is beaming out. That first ring, or what we call the roots of the authentic self, the essential traits that make us us, me, you. The pathway practices, what are the things I do in my life every single day that sustain my connection to my essential self, so that I'm using my essential self as my worldview, from which I allow my curiosity to ask, what wants to happen now? Who do I want to be with? What choice is it that will be most enlivening and self-respecting and allow my full potency today, in this moment? Our values are part of those roots. Our principles are part of those roots. And frankly, I've come to the point now in my life, with change happening so fast around us, that I spend every 6 months, I spend a couple of days exploring, are my roots the same? Have my values shifted in priority? Am I living out principles that are not serving me? Have I got practices that are out of date with who I'm being today, what I'm wanting now? My essence is my essence. This is really the core of who I am. It's always been there. It might have been covered up with things I know how to do, my personality, if you will. But examination of, am I living from the roots of my being? It's a really important thing to incorporate to our way of living. And then infusing our intentions. What's the experience in my life that I want? My choices. What will I give my attention to, so that I can have more probability of having the experience I'm intending? What actions make it possible for me to be in the place of best potential? This is how we influence our circumstances and contexts. We may not be able to change them completely, but at least internally I'll know I'll be at home in myself, and I don't have to be as reactive or as afraid, because I'm home, I'm centered, I know unconditional self-love. And from that, we get quality of life. So even if all you did was contemplate that image a bit and give yourself some meditation time with it, I think you'll start to discover some internal resource you might not be tapping into as consistently as you could be. Now, I use the image of the butterfly, and in particular the monarch butterfly, for the pun that monarch is, the internal ruler. I also use it because the monarch is a quite remarkable butterfly. It migrates here on our continent. It migrates from North America to Mexico every year. It takes 2 to 6 weeks. And they always return to the place they were born. How in the world do they know that? It's in their DNA. And they lay eggs, and the cycle begins again. It's amazing, just amazing. The size of their brain is like a sesame seed. Just imagine what we could do as human beings if we could claim that internal DNA, the innate creativity that is us. Yes, so the question is perfectly timed here. What if I did not achieve a goal I had planned so well and have all the skills and potential for? I almost lost faith in the process and in myself too. What's the message of such failure? What is the message in such failure? What is here for me to learn? Is the question I want to invite you to transform that into. What is here in the experience I had when I took a risk and pursued something? It didn't turn out the way I had imagined it in my mind's eye. It didn't match at all. I'm now calling it a failure. Am I a failure? Or is the action a failure? The action created a result that was not pleasing, was not what was intended. And so the question is, what was I paying attention to? What did I intend in my experience on the way of delivering that project? Did I pay attention to be sure I was with people and in places and using tools and paying attention to learning every step along the way? Or did I get seduced by the destination and stop noticing when something changed in my environment and I didn't calibrate? I didn't pause and reflect and ask myself, we had this part in the plan, but you know what? That's not going to work because it doesn't look the same now as it did 6 months ago when we started this project. So our identity gets wrapped up in the destination and we forget, I really need to embrace the moment. I need to have more spontaneity. I need to trust that it's okay to make some slight adjustments. I can shift my mindset. I can shift my choices and actions. And I can only do it if I'm paying attention. And I think this is Rumi's point. Seek the wisdom that will untie your knot. You are not a failure. A project you worked on didn't produce the result you wanted. Get curious. Seek the path that demands your whole being. What part of your being didn't show up for the experience of that project that if you brought it in now would have something else emerge? This is what it means to live sovereign, to be self-ruling, to be at choice, to accept your responsibility, to keep choosing the relationship you want to the conditions of your lives, particularly in those moments when it's not what you want. What did I not see? And so this is another one of those slides. So I'm going to give you a good solid 3 minutes to be with this. And this is a very simple framework. How do you make decisions? Yes, your values infuse your decision making. Yes, your principles infuse your decision making. All of those things about what constructs your worldview influence it. And that's what this is really saying. What assumptions am I making? What preferences do I operate from? What are the habits and the way I relate to it? How does that start to build in an implicit bias? So think for a moment about some situation that's occurring for you right now that you're really unhappy with. It's not what you want. And you can't figure out for the life of you why it's happening that way. Take the next 3 minutes and just draw, a 4-box on your piece of paper and see if you can come up with at least one assumption, one preference, one habit, and therefore one bias that might be operating in that situation. And we'll go ahead and turn the recording on pause. And I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes. All right, hopefully everyone has something, at least one thing in each of the 4 boxes. Okay, so when I ask myself those questions, who am I, what do I want to be, what is my purpose in life, I don't seem to find an answer. I get what for writers is called writer's block. I think my surroundings, there's a huge influence for my uncertainty. How do you think I should overcome it? So the last question is the clue. What if there's nothing to overcome? What if those questions are what you're living into? Not to find answers, but to live into the question. So let's hold that thought for a moment, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move into a series of practices, things that can assist you. And I'd like to work through them because they're not meant to be resolved today, but they're all tools and resources for you to go away with as you continue to be in this Ramadan period through May 12th, right? I think Eid al-Fitr. Yeah, okay. All right. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So here we go. You've probably all heard about growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck's work out of Stanford. Fabulous body of work to help us understand what this evolutionary possibility is. And ultimately, there are so many different mindsets. What I'd like about her work is that it gives us kind of an overarching framework. Because someone identifies a place in their life that they're in fixed mindset, one might call writer's block a fixed mindset, the dedication to being able to loosen your grip on having an answer or the right answer to those questions is part of the evolution to being in a growth mindset relationship to whatever it is you're working on. So rather than saying that there's an answer to purpose, the answer is being on the quest for meaning, trusting that meaning unfolds every moment if we're quiet enough to listen. So I call this the adopt a love of learning. That original thinking and our creative life force is seeking our attention. And we gotta sit still. We gotta stop doing and allow it to inform us. When's the last time you just sat still outside until you could hear the wind and feel it on your skin and realize what the temperature was, and then the birds started to come into your awareness, or whatever else is in your physical nature environment? We go by them all day long and don't pay any attention to them, and yet they're communicating to us what has meaning for us. Adopting a love of learning. And in the experience of those moments is when we build our reserves to cause and sustain great accomplishment. So we've got it wired a little backwards with our reverence for achievement and accomplishment. How do we do that? By tapping into all of our potential. But if I don't know my potential, then I'm not going to get great accomplishment. Dualistic thinking, the mirage of separation. If we're stiller and quieter and we look within and we notice what's moving me, what am I attracted to, and we keep connection to that, we take a step and we say, is that giving me what I wanted? Not quite. What's off about it? What's the next thing? Every step is a moment to cause greatness for ourselves. We add those moments together, it starts to create great accomplishment. Inside out, not outside in. So adopting a growth mindset is part of the possibility. Now, I've given you a little juxtaposition in this image here, that we have the craft of wood cutting and marble sculpting, and then the finished product. And I want you to imagine Michelangelo. Now, how did he carve the David? Yes, he had good technique. Yes, he had good marble. Yes, he had all the time in the world to do it. But the most important thing is that he believed that the perfect physique was inside that chunk of marble before he began. And through the breath kept in his mind's eye the perfect image of the perfect male physique every step of the way. He trusted that with time and patience and deliberate love of learning, that stone would talk to him and he would carve the perfect David. Every one of us has that same capacity. Now, mind you, did Michelangelo have an ability to visualize the perfect male physique? Absolutely. I'm not sure I could do that. I don't think that's my unique gift. But the capacity to visualize is. So, strengthening your noticing of your mindset in any situation is the first step. The micro skill is noticing. You must notice before you can become aware. Aware says you put it in context. But if you're not noticing, all bets are off. Everything I'm talking about will keep you in the mirage of separation, that something out there is better than me. I won't believe in me unless I notice me and start to say, wow, look at me, I did that. Wow, I had that experience. That's exactly what I was going for. Now, how might I repeat that for myself? I stay connected to it. I have to notice first and then chip away all the habits and preferences and assumptions I'm making about what's expected of me, in what place, with which people, so that I can get to the truth of me, the essence of me, no matter what outer circumstances. No separation. I am me everywhere I go. And choose the connection to others in the world that inspires your public service. What is your part? Every one of you has agency to produce something. Maybe what yours to do is to produce prayer, beautiful prayer, every day. If that was the only thing you did, you know that you've made your contribution to the wider circle of people feeling connection with Source, and everything in between. These are some practices for personal resonance when you're feeling out of sorts, when you have a failed project. Not a failed person, failed project. When you have an experience that didn't go the way you wanted it to go. It was a moment. It's not all of your moments. It's not all of you. These are some practices to bring you back to center. One of my favorite colleagues says, it's great to know your center. Please do that. Spend some time, finding the roots of your authentic self. But when you're in rocked off center, how do you remember those roots and get back to them? These are what we mean by evoking self-resonance. So artful pause. Yes, it takes practice. First takes noticing, I am not feeling good about what's going on. I'm in dualistic thinking. I'm feeling judgment. I'm controlling. I'm enslaved, whatever it might be. Notice it. Notice, is it pleasurable or painful, this moment I'm having? What is a habit? What's a conscious choice right now? Is it coming from inside of me, or am I reacting to something outside of me? Artful pause to ask the question, and then restore your center by breathing into the heart. Great body of work from the Heart Math Institute, cardiologist discovering the value of the breath in the healing process of his patients. Has turned this into an extraordinary exploration for the last 30 years. Great body of work there, Heart Math Institute. Practicing return to center through the breath is a multi-sensory experience. A place I go when I'm feeling really troubled is a memory when I was 14, hiking in southern Arkansas. I was doing my first solo activity with a compass and a topographic map. I had a grapefruit in my backpack and a bottle of water, and I'd been hiking since sunrise. I finally got to the bluff where I could feel the wind on my face and the sun warming my body, and I could hear the water in the stream down at the bottom from this bluff I was sitting on. I cut open the grapefruit, I put my mouth on it, and oh my God, I'd never tasted a better grapefruit ever in my life. And in that moment, my whole being knew what bliss was. I can go back to the memory of that moment. I can breathe that imagery into my mind's eye and completely change my internal systems. The breath, deeper, more complete breaths in the body can bring the imagination to life as if it is right now. The dream time doesn't know the difference between now and not now. That's why dreams can be so vividly impactful to us. We wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I've been dreaming all night. It's real. And centering in gratitude. Oh, there's so much abundance in the world. If I'll simply allow it in, it's there for me to see. And so how do you do that? Through a practice of gratitude, speaking into the mirror to the self. I appreciate myself for this risk I took. I appreciate myself for this care that I offered. I appreciate myself for my patience with my kids. Whatever it is, name it, notice it and name it, claim it. Share it with at least one other person, maybe in the evening with your partner. Give each other 5 minutes to share something you're grateful for that happened this day. Practice it 3 times a day. Take a break, deliberate mindfulness. There's so much available now. I love the Calm meditation app. It's the 3-minute break we all need from the crazy life we're all living right now. Come back home to yourself in that 30 minutes listening to the Calm music. Say something you're grateful for. Another little tip that I learned from a colleague was to do a 2-column grateful activity. 3 things I'm grateful for myself having produced today. 3 people in my life that made it possible for me to do the things I did today. And the strangest things happen. About a week into it, I noticed the things that I did that I was being grateful for actually happened because of the people I was being with. Relationship is the fundamental unit of society. None of us operate alone. And so I've been talking about this all the way along just to give you a little bit of an anchoring from the authentic self, inside out. The 4 human capacities. All humans have the ability to generate the life that they want. Original thinking, turning that into tangible form through the creative act, learning every step of the way, not being attached to whether it was good or it was bad. It just wasn't satisfying. It is what is. It's not matching what we're wanting to produce. What do I learn about that so that I keep continuously producing results that are ever more satisfying? These dynamic capacities are what it means to be generative. And when we're doing that from a growth mindset, we're letting ourselves tap into the full potential of who we are, living into wholeness. Wholeness as a concept is you already are, you just don't know it because you're not listening. Change the way you view change and your authentic self. These 3 questions, I'm not going to go through this. I'd like to open the mics for about 10 or 15 minutes and let's see what's on people's minds. These are in the slide deck for you to spend some time with. What is required of each of us to choose emergent perceiving? Meaning patience with what's showing up that I'm noticing. I wonder what that might mean for me. Intentions that sustain conscious choice, and then choices and actions that empower your potency. These are things I journal. These are things I sit in circle and have conversation about with colleagues. These are things that I ask clients all the time. I'm listening for the things that are underneath the question. Is this client having the courage to be still? And if they're not, no wonder they're feeling fried and burnt out and hopeless. They haven't taken any time to fill their tank. So just something to give you to work with over the next couple of weeks. And so now here we are. What's emerged together for us? Hopefully you've had an opportunity to notice the move from expert to wonder, from being influential to being in curiosity, which helps to build relationship, to soften performance with being willing to be developed, to not be an expert because we can't know everything. How do we be together, listening to perceiving all of the experience from doing to being? Not without the things on the from side, but in a different balance, in a different ratio, giving ourselves a spectrum of experience that is the whole being. All right, so I'm going to pause this for a moment. I do have a few things others to share, but let's see, can we do raised hand if people want to open the mics, and let's see what might be on folks' mind that I could answer.
Yes, sure, we can have the raised hand, and it would be great for to hear from some. So if anyone would like to participate. Lanud. Nuran can, yes, thank you, Nuran. Go ahead, Lanud.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you guys? I have a question. You explained that you feel gratitude because of the people, the relationships around you and the people that surround you.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly can we choose our relationships and the people we to be around? I mean, how do we know that like those people are good to go with, and that like they're going to be helpful in life, and others that are toxic?
How do I tell the good guys from the bad guys? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, probably that.
Because they are, all of them are friends and guests. I'll borrow from Rumi again. Welcome them all in. They're all guests in your home. And the question then is, okay, if everybody's a welcome guest, what is the way to be with them that's good for me and good for you? I believe in the principle of reciprocity. When I give over to another genuinely, without any attachment, and it comes back to me, that's a worthy relationship. When I give over to someone without any attachment and nothing comes back, there's something in our relationship field that isn't a fit, right? We're not resonant with each other. So I'm paying attention to, so take the infinity symbol. I'm paying attention to the energy moving back and forth with ease and grace. It's the quality of the experience I'm having, not where they've come from or what they've accomplished in their lives, but who are they being with me in that moment? And trusting your gut and your intuition and your heart that can tell you, is there resonance here? And if the answer is no, don't stop there. Ask the question. Tell me some more about you. What has you want to do this project with me? What are you inspired to create? What might I contribute to you? What would it mean for us to partner together? So it's not just your decision. Like we say when you're interviewing for a job, it's as important for you to learn about whether the company is a good fit for you as it is for the company to determine if you are a good fit. Both sides must happen. It's not a singular responsibility on your shoulders. It's something that is created together.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Do you have any more questions? Or please feel free to just raise your hand and speak to us, and ask your question.
What did I do, Reem? There's silence.
I think they're just mesmerized. I am.
Well, I think that's healthy because my intent was to see if we might aspire them to dream. And remembering that we have that capacity inside. Every single one of us does. And that it's more, in my mind, more valuable than all of the things that I've learned to do in my life and capabilities that I demonstrate are meaningless if I'm not connected to the core of who I am and in relationship with people that I have found that resonance with, as we were just talking about. That's where my satisfaction comes from. You know, people ask me all the time, how do you do that all the time? I had somebody interview me last week on the book, and they said, you know, the thing about you is you're always the same. You're always on an even keel. You're always joyful. You're always happy. You're always insightful. I said, okay, those are your adjectives. I'm always me. Now, I wasn't always me, right? I didn't pop out of the womb knowing all of this stuff. I've absolutely learned it out of my own hardship and, you know, falling down and skinning my knees. Every now and then I talk about being broke and living out of my back seat of my car. Like, what am I going to do? Oh my goodness. Well, doing wasn't the answer. I had to ask for help. I had to be in relationship. I had to relearn. And we all have hardships and ups and downs in our lives. And yet, it always works out. Why does it work out? Because we stop separating ourselves. And I'm really grateful, Reem, that you let me play around with this this particular subject material. This Mirage of Separation has been on my mind for a while, and so thank you for an opportunity to explore it with your community.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for allowing us to be part of it and to listen to all of this, because I think there are multiple things that you've mentioned today, such a great reminders. And out of what you just shared now, Janet, a question that we ask ourselves all the time, I know a lot of people ask, is how do we find our voice to reach out to people and ask for help?
Yeah. It required that I let go of knowing, right? As we were talking about in the early going of the slides. And that principle that my father gave me, essentially, what's the movie Apollo 13, when he walks into the engineer's room and he said, failure's not an option, get those boys back from space. So failure was not an option in my family. I was not allowed to fail. Whatever it took, I would do it. And I pulled a lot of all-nighters over my young adult life to try to figure out how to find my way. I'm not naturally brilliant. It's hard work. It's hard work to kind of get the world and get my thoughts organized. And it got a lot easier when I realized that was an illusion. That isn't what it was about at all. Who was me? Me was the kid on skates on the ice rink who could take music and express through my body something that brought joy to people. Well, how are you going to make a living doing that? Well, I actually did for a few years. I was a coach to competitive figure skaters, but it was too small, and I realized that, and I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I listened to the hunger inside of me, that quest for meaning, and I realized that I had to ask, how do I go to college? What is college? How do I fund college? How do I get a scholarship? Right? Those are all questions of asking for help, but they came from connecting to something interior that wanted a different experience of my life and accepting responsibility for that. So asking for help is not a sign of weakness in my book. It is a sign of strength, of resolve, of being in the grasp of living into that full potential of who we are. So that's a shift in mindset, because asking for help is often seen as a vulnerability when it is actually the exact opposite.
I couldn't agree more. And it's an absolute mindset of thinking at it from a weakness, shifting it to, it's a state where we're gaining strength by asking others and asking for their help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also saw Anud, you raised your hand, Anud, again. Do you have another question? Would you like to have the mic? Yes. Go ahead, Anud.
Hello again. So you spoke about growth mindset. I've been watching a lot of like self-development and self-assurance, acceptance and stuff on TikTok, and how to have a better mindset. I just couldn't put my finger on how to do it yet, how to like change my mindset into something better for me. I don't know if you get my question.
Yes, I do. I'm going to send Reem something that she's welcome to share that we use in our coach training programs to explore fixed versus growth mindset. A couple of things that are important to understand is you already have a growth mindset. You have a fixed and a growth mindset. You have both. They're in you as a human being. You already got it. What you may not be doing is noticing that you do. What you might be doing is listening to everybody else instead of listening to yourself about the way you're showing up. What you might be doing is discounting when you are operating in a more open way because it's not quite creating what you want yet. So you might have a bit of all or nothing. Am I or am I not? Do you hear the dualistic thinking? As opposed to what's happening in this situation. The 4-box exercise I gave you all to play with a little bit. Have I got an assumption operating that's a fixed mindset? I think the world works this way. I think this person works this way. I think this situation works this way. And you know darn well it's not true. That circumstance might be evidence that there is a moment in a circumstance like that they behave this way. But who else are they? Because I don't know who else they are. That's the growth mindset talking. The growth mindset says, something to learn here. And you're on your way. So, first answer is you already have a growth mindset. You're simply not tapping it. Second right answer is when you notice that you already have the curiosity emerging, you're on your way. Stay with it. Stay connected to it. Practice your noticing. Write down your thoughts and your actions and your behaviors. And spend some time reflecting on, am I producing the experience I want? Don't worry about the achievement, that will come. Are you showing up with all of who you are? That's a growth mindset choice.
Okay, that's delightful. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Hi, Majda's here. How wonderful.
Hello, Majda. Yes, and do you have a question? Go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
It's actually not a question, it's a comment. I'm really happy to this moment that between Janet who inspired me in the last 2 years, and then with Reem, who also inspired me. The two words that I liked from this discussion is essence and pause. I learned I'm connected totally with my essence, and how I'm connecting to my essence by pause. In every situations I pass through, I pause, and this pausing allowed me to go to my essence. And then with Reem, of course, she supports me to recognize my emotions and expressing my emotions. But the thing is that when I express my emotions, I go back again to my essence. So for you too, thank you very much that you inspired me, always inspired me. And today is one of my really excellent Ramadan night. Thank you very much for all of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Could I share one more slide, Reem, with everybody? I just want to make everyone aware of a really cool opportunity that we're offering. There we go. For several years now, Invite Change has reached across the world for International Coaching Week. And so we wanted to let you know we're doing that again. There are 46 workshops that will be offered during the week. And you mentioned the book. I'm also doing a virtual book tour, you know, in the age of COVID. But 4 different chapters that I've developed information to share. They're all eligible for CCE, and you know, I have acquired those. So it's also available for a company. So if you wanted to do something with Corrietch around the book, we could do that in the future too. So just wanted to share those 2 options.
Thank you so much for sharing, and absolutely, personally, I can't wait to attend and be part of it and learn more. The more I learn from you, the more I listen to you, Janet, the more I get hungry to learn even more and get inspired even further. It seems my soul is so connected with your words, and it just it has this really beautiful feeling of fulfillment when learning from you, and just spending this hour and a half, which went by just like this. I just couldn't feel time. I was just mesmerized. I can't thank you enough. I'm truly grateful for being here with us tonight, for inspiring us all. I can see from the chat that everyone was in deep thoughts and in deep connection with what you were sharing with us. Truly, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us generously tonight, Janet. Thank you.
A pleasure. And I will see you again, I'm sure. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and participation. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your time in Ramadan. And maybe I'll see you in somewhere during International Coaching Week.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight. It just makes it complete, and this initiative makes it complete by you being here, by being engaged, taking the inspiration you're looking for out of these talks, and just put them the way you want to put them in your world, in your life, and just enjoy that that learning and growth that's happening continuously. Thank you so much.